Okay, Greg's brother just had a little baby boy and he wanted to make him a baby rattle. He showed me a picture of a baby rattle. So I told Greg that we'd make this video so he'd have a better understanding of stamping silver. I'm gonna make, in this video, I'm gonna make a stamped silver bead. The beads come out looking like this. And when you make them, you make two halves, which the halves look like, that one went on the floor. The halves look like this. So what we're going to do is go through all the steps that is required to make these halves, and then we'll show how to solder them together. So I'm going to get some other stuff to show you, and we'll be right back. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is called a disc cutter, or some people have other names for it. You can buy these. I bought this thing, I couldn't tell you how many years ago, and I couldn't tell you how many discs I've cut with it. They're made out of, this is hardened steel, the base part. I'm going to go ahead and lift this up, and all these inserts will fall out of it. It's got ground holes up here, and these are precision ground, the cutters. And then they come out through this way. When you cut a disc, you put your silver in, and then you just strike it with a hammer. I've got 2 pieces of scrap silver that I rolled out. You know, I'd like to get 4 discs, but if I can only get 2, it doesn't matter. So what we'll do next is I'll cut a few discs over here on the other part of the shop. And I might be able to get, I can get 2. As long as I'm careful when I cut them, I can get 2 out of each one of these rolled out pieces of scrap. So we're going to move to the other side, or the other spot, and then I'll cut a couple of discs. Okay, having rolled these out, I've decided I'm just going to go ahead and anneal them. They'll cut easier and be softer as soon as I get some gas to this thing. There we go. I'm just going to anneal these. And again, like I've said in other videos, you just bring it up to cherry red. The reason these are turning so black is they've just been in my silver box for years. They'll get clean when we throw them in the pickles. That one there showed cherry red really good. Okay, these were stamped on. Many years ago, my sister used to do some silversmithing, and I don't see the stamp now. But these had been stamped on, and by running them through the rolling mill, there's a little bit of a stamp right there. Running them through the rolling mill, there's stamps pretty much all over the face of that thing, which will be the inside of the bead I'm going to make. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and throw those in the pickle so they clean up a little bit. They're still kind of warm. Mercy sakes. Okay, when you're getting ready to cut a disc, what you do is you slide your silver in. If you're trying to get as many pieces as possible, you go just past that hole edge, and that's when you cut your disc. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this on the block and grab my hammer and we'll cut a disc. There it is. Okay, I'm gonna go just past my hole edge and then lay that right on top, hold it down, and then just hit it. And there's a disc. And with these, you have to push them, push them through. See, I can maybe get 2 discs out of that one, so let's see. I can give it a try. The worst that'll happen is I won't get 2. Have a little clipped edge. It looks like I might be able to get 2. See, I got 2. Usually I have a piece of wood I push this through with, but not today. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do 4, so as long as I can get 4. So I have an oops one, or potentially oops one. Okay, we got that little bit of a cut right there. When you're doing this with thicker silver, you have to literally, which I'm going to have to do right now. I'm just going to grab a piece of wood. You have to hang it over an edge and just knock it through, especially with thick silver. Okay, one more, we hope. Cool, I got them all. There's a little bit of a booger right there, but I might still stamp it. Anyway, yeah, you can see where I overlapped. That's what caused this little flap right here. And you can also see on that the stamping that was done. But if you flip it over, there is no stamping. You know, and I don't even know if I'll mess with this one. We'll see. Okay, on to the next step. Okay, this set right here is called a Machinist Square. It comes with a square, a protractor, and this is for centering stuff. I'm going to show you how to use the centering part of it here just in a short. That'll do it. Okay, the way you use one of these to give yourself a center on a round thing, okay, that's going to be the inside of my bead. So you just lay it in the V, make sure it's down all the way, and you make a little line. Turn it 90 degrees roughly, lay it in the groove again. Down all the way, make another little line. And you should be able to see an X. I don't know if that's going to show up for Greg or not. Do I need to move it?
We got it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do the other ones and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, this is called a Santur Punch. Typically this points at 60 degrees when you're a machinist, you know, but that's probably freehand ground. Okay, what I'm going to do now is take the point of that and put it right where those 2 lines cross. And then just lightly hit it. Makes a little divot in there. And one way you can make sure you're in center is put your center punch in that line. It's not working that way. Let's see if it'll work this way. Slide it till it stops. Although I just as soon do it by eye, so. Anyway, you don't have to hit it very hard, just enough to give you a divot in there. And obviously, the closer you are to center, the better off you are. Okay, so that's what you do there. Okay, now I'm going to have to find the stamp I'm going to use on this, so we'll cut right here. Okay, over the years I had a friend that had a pawn shop, and I used to be able to go in there. He'd buy toolboxes and stuff, and when they went dead pawn, he'd open them up and pull out whatever was in there. And fortunately for me, I saw him often enough to where I managed to get all these stamps, dead pawn. Not all of them, I've made a few of them, but a lot of these are classic, old stamps. Some of them are newer. They're all just luscious stamps. But they, you know, when I said I need to find the stamp I want to use, herein lies the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and go through here and find the stamp I used to always use on these. I think if I remember correctly, it's on an old hobnail. But I'll go ahead and find it, and then once I find it, we can then lay out for stamping. Okay, we just walked over to the house and I had to wash my hands because I got so dirty digging through all those stamps to find that I already had that stamp in another box. Anyway, we did find the stamp I was looking for. Cold and windy outside, let me tell you. Okay, this is the little stamp. You know, I couldn't tell you how many beads I've made using this stamp. You know, I obviously put some aluminum tape on here for some reason. Anyway, this stamp height, or how far I want it in on the edge of the disc, is from this bottom two need to be on a line that's 100 thousandths inside from this edge. So I'm going to lay out a circle now to guide myself where I need to have this every time I strike on it. I've already got my calipers or my dividers set. And right there's the 100 thousandths. So now I'm going to scribe a line, and you don't want to go real deep. You just want to be able to have a reference. In fact, I can probably put the line on while Greg's filming. Just go around. I'll do the other ones on the bench, it'll work either. But you see that little circle in there now? Well, that's where you lay that arc, the points of the arc, and then you start stamping, which you'll see. And you have to get it close enough of spacing so you don't overlap. You know, you can make up as you go along. Again, we'll see it in the filming, but I'm going to go ahead and get the other two laid out, and then we'll get back after it. Yeah, okay, what I'm going to do, this is the disc that we cut, and it had a little flat on it. So because it's been 30 plus years since I did this, I'm going to go ahead and figure out how many stamps I need to go around this, and thus making it to where I can get them evenly spaced. You need to put the points of your arc right on top of that layout line. And then you just lightly hit it. Okay, if you lightly hit it, you made yourself what's called a register. So I'll go around and lightly hit all the way around, and then I'll go back through and hit it again to give me the impression I'm after. And you can tell I'm not hitting real hard. I'm just making my impression. When you do what's called old style work, you get your pattern laid out, and then you go back through and do your final stamp. And some of the old style stuff I've done over the years, you might hit your stamp 6 or 8 times, 5 times. Anyway, now that I'm there, I can pretty much tell I can only get 2 more in. So I'll figure out how much space I need to leave between the 2. I gotta make sure it's not gonna be 3. No, it's only gonna be 2. So I'll leave a little bit of space. By that one. And this should drop pretty much right in between the 2. Okay, now what I'll do, I have a few that are not on that line. They'll get closer as I hit it harder. I didn't do a very good job. That's why I just did this for practice on this piece. I'm using a 10 power Optivisor right now, and I think it's kind of screwing me up. Anyway, once you get your initial stamps in place, oh, I was using a 5. That's probably why I was having trouble. I should have been using the 10. Anywho, you just go back and just stick your stamp back in to where you feel it lock. Like that. See, I can move that thing. That's because the stamp's locked into my original head, and then you hit it a good one. You can tell I'm hitting pretty good now, but you don't want to hit too hard or you'll go through the silver if it's real thin. And I'm not really that concerned about how close I am to that line because I'm just trying to get back in the flow of things. You know, as long as you lock your stamp back in, it's going to hit in the same exact spot. Okay, this one's off a little bit away from the, well, maybe not. I'll just go ahead and stamp it. It was off, but again, I'm just practicing because it's been so many years since I did something like this. Helps if you have the stamp the right direction. Yeah, I was way off on a couple of them. I'm glad I did a sample. And anyway, then what I'll do next is flip it over. Flatten it out. And I'll go ahead and use this one as to show the steps as I go along. You can see up here, it's way off. And that's why I practiced. You know, and you could still make a bead out of this. It's not gonna, most people would never notice that, but I wanted to be more relaxed with this stamping when I make the bead. So, anywho, I'll get another one and hopefully stamp it better. And then the next process will be annealing them, and then we'll start doming them. Cool. Okay, now that Greg's dog's done licking me. Just kidding. Anyway, it's a bit cold, waiting for the shop to warm up. I mentioned at the end of the last part that I was going to dome next. Well, I got to put line work on this thing before I dome it, so that's what we're going to do now. Is I'll get the line work in, and then we'll go ahead and dome it. I'm going to get all the other ones stamped, so I have a group together to solder, but I'm just showing you how you need to make each piece as you're doing it. So next we're going to put the line work in. Okay, this is just what they call a hobnail. And when you're doing these beads, you need chisel points at various lengths depending on how big a bead you're making. And this has just been ground down to where it'll make a line. And when you start lining it, you lay this edge right where your two arcs meet. And then just point it right toward the center punch mark. And by pointing right to the center punch mark, it gives you a little bit of an open area. Around where your hole is going to be. This isn't going real good. And you will notice that it starts warping ridiculously. And when you do this all the time and are making literal strands of these silver beads, all this stuff goes a lot better. Anyway, that's the initial stamp, and I'm going to flatten it back out, and then I'm going to make my lines all the same depth. In fact, I think I'm going to anneal it before I do any more, so cool. I just annealed this. I didn't throw it in the pickle or anything. Right now it doesn't really matter. I just got out here and didn't even have the pickle turned on. Anyway, I'm going to go back around relatively quick and try to make all these lines at equal depth. Once you have it, you can see where you didn't have a nice square strike on your chisel. or your line tool. Which is all right. This is just a practice one. I'm still working on practice one here. Anyway, let me flatten that out a little bit. That's basically what you're, basically what you're after. Not the crummy stamping I did, but I'll go ahead and show you the ones that I'm going to sit here and stamp now when I get them to my satisfaction, how I like them. So we'll be back. Okay, there's pretty even stamp all the way around. So now tool in my hands the right way this time. It's giving me a nice even depth. Here we go. Okay, this is, I'll end up stamping the outside edge a little bit more. I just annealed these, and this is looking at the stamp side after it's annealed. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the pickle, flatten it back out. I'll do those outside feather edges again, and pretty much done with the stamp work, and then we'll get into doming it. Thanks. Okay, I just annealed these and pickled them and looked at them real good. I'm going to go ahead and go back around the little art stamps and get myself a pretty consistent depth, and then we'll get to the doming, because you need to have these outer stamps relatively deep, because when you get the bead made, you'll see it. I spin the bead on a pin to sand it, and if this is too not deep enough, you'll end up sanding a good portion of it away on some. So I'm going to go ahead and hit them once again, and then we'll get back after it. Goes a lot quicker when you got something you can lock into. Okay, and what I just did is I tilted the stamp a little bit away from myself, so these outer edges went in pretty darn deep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and anneal them again, and then we'll get the dap block out. Okay, I'm getting ready to dome these halves. This is one of the first things, early tools or things I bought. It's called a dap plate. It's got various size half rounds in it. You know, again, I couldn't tell you how many years I've been using this thing. Okay, it comes with a set of ball ends. You know, because I used these so much over the years, when I got this new studio set up, I could machine where it was all mushroomed over off. Here's another one. And what you do when you first start bending these is let me grab a hammer. I'm just going to do it on this garbage one first. You just lay it in the biggest hole. Anyway, it doesn't really matter if you use one that's the exact, you're just trying to start an arc. Center it up a little bit. And you just start doming it. This was the garbage one. Okay, let me find the right balls that I want to use, and we'll start doing the non-garbage ones. I wonder where my big one. Okay, normally when you're doing this, you're doing a bunch of these things, but I'm only doing one bead, so I'm not going to start here. You try to get that thing in there nice and level, and then just lay your punch thing as near dead center as you can and get it a good one. I usually hit it more than once, so. Okay, there's one. After your initial hit, straighten it back out, and then just hit it again. And then you end up with 2 starts of your halves. And then progressively, I can probably do one more of each. That's pretty close on that one. Okay, go to here, grab this one. You'll notice I'm not using the tool that fits perfectly in there. I'm just trying to stretch the bead out some now. Again, straighten it back out and hit it again. Whiny girl. You just want to be in the video. Oops. You know, and what I'll do after this is I'll go ahead and anneal it, because we're probably going to be coming to the 3 more holes from here. It's better to anneal it too often than not often enough. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm going for as close to a ball as possible. It doesn't really look like, I'm going to end up going, the last place I did it was right here. I'm going to go to this hole and this hole, and I'm 99% sure this is where I get my true hemisphere. So we'll go to that hole with a smaller tool, which is that one and that one. Okay. Just get it where it looks level. I'll explain in a second. When I do these, you'll notice that I'm using what looks like too small, because that fits this perfect. And this is it's undersized. I'm hitting, so this center area hits the bottom. I'm stretching that center area so it'll hit the bottom. If I hit it with the other one, it wouldn't necessarily bring that all the way out. So let's do the other one. Okay, then we'll go to the next one. I'm going to probably have to anneal again to get my last form. Again, that's the one that fits, so in this hole. So I'll go over here. Starting to get some actual shape to it now. And again, if you're sitting here making like 50 of these beads, it goes a lot smoother or quick. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just sitting here flapping my lips, so don't mind me. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and anneal again, and we're going to be coming to the true hemisphere on the next one, I believe. And it might even be the next one. I don't think. It might be. So, anneal again. Maybe I might be able to pull that off. No, I'm going to go ahead and anneal it. I think I could go ahead and push that down in there, but if I anneal it, I know it's going to drop right in there. And then if I need to go to the next size, this will be in better shape. So I'll go ahead and anneal it again. I'm an annealing fool. Okay, these will be the final. I know I'm going to end up in here. Or I'm 99% sure. This is sticking up a little bit. So I just kind of, obviously you saw, I kind of hit it. You just want that to be sitting in there as level as possible. Maybe that's not level. Okay, then you can back off one or go to the next size larger, which is this size, and just hit it once, and that makes that outer edge go pretty accurately round. And the reason I'm doing that is if I'm going to that next size smaller, I need to be as true round on that outer edge as possible, because I'm going to be forcing it into this hole. Okay, ooh, come on. Those aren't hemispheres yet. You could make a bead out of it. I'll go ahead and hold it in my hands. But it's not a ball. That's a real nice bead. A lot of people just go ahead and make that into a bead. But because of how I do stuff, I'm going to go to that last hole. This is where we go for the perfect hemisphere, and this is always the most trying part, I guess is a good way to put it. I went over and cleaned the rust out of that hole. This is undersized. This fits perfect. So the first thing I'll do is put this here, and then I'm going to use the undersized one. And like I say, this is always the most difficult part, because you got to try to get the whole thing to drop down in there. Ooh, it did. Miracle of miracles. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. Oh, shut up. The dog over here usually gets lunch with us here pretty soon, and she's getting impatient, which is fine. We know how to shut her up. Give her lunch. Oh, okay, that, you just got to eyeball it. That one didn't come out too well. In fact,
oh, it split.
It sure did. I guess we'll make another one. Okay, this is going to give me my hemisphere right now. Make sure it's pretty level in there, and then just take the one that fits that thing. Oops, I moved it. Fits that thing perfect. Get it right in there. Oop, I moved it again. Thing's moving too easy. I'm gonna have to 4 speed this thing. Hit it a good one, knock it down a little bit. Hit it a good one. And there's your perfect, or near perfect hemisphere. Seeing as though this one split, I'm gonna have to make another one if I want to finish this video. I obviously was hitting that in a little bit too deep, and that's to show you, if you stamp a little bit too deep, it's getting real thin, and that one obviously got real thin. What can we say? Part of the sport. Just want to let y'all know my video guy's out on a sabbatical. I'm not really sure how long he'll be away from being able to video. Almost had this silver stamped bead video done, and I'm going to attempt to do it by myself. If I don't get it done, you'll never know what I just said. Okay, earlier on in the video when I was doming these bead halves, I left it in there, you witnessed an oops. I apparently used a little bit too thin of silver, plus the fact that I haven't done it in 35 to 40 years didn't help a bit. Anyway, you'll notice on this particular one especially, when I was doming it, it literally ripped apart. I did do new halves so I could finish the video, and I used a little bit thicker silver. I think this silver is 18 thousandths, and the stuff that I redid it with is 22. Anywho, I'm going to go ahead and show you the next step as soon as I get set up. Okay, here's the 4 hemispheres that I made off camera. I did learn some stuff on the ones that I had problems with. These are thicker than what I was using, and I also annealed a lot more often. I annealed every time I did a little bit of a drastic dome. The other ones I don't think I was annealing often enough for one thing, and these ended up coming out pretty darn good. What I'm going to do next is show you how I get them ready to solder together. I did sand this a little bit when I was doming them over, because the last place you hit it into that plate, it was sticking up a little bit, so I sanded them a little bit. If I was making like 50 of these beads, I'd be using my diamond flat lap, my flat lap. This is a diamond lap, 260 mesh. I keep these in my drawer, my silversmithing, various mesh sizes. And what I'm going to do is just make this to where it's flat. There you can see some little indents still on it. You know, and this goes pretty quick if you just sit there, and you gotta spin it in your fingers as you're going to keep it as flat as, as even as possible. See how that looks. Oops, get a hold of the darn thing. Okay, there's 2 spots right here that still aren't down to level, 3 spots. So I'll just sand a little bit more. And as soon as you get it where there's still a couple of spots, so a little bit more. The main reason I do this on my flat lap, I can run water on it, plus it goes real quick. But I'm only doing 4 halves. I thought it was kind of silly to fire up the flat lap. Another nice thing about using the flat lap with water is you recover 90% or better of your silver filings, which I'll do this way too. Okay, there's one little tiny spot here. I'm going to go ahead and leave that there because the solder is going to come out from inside the bead out to the outer edge, so it'll fill that up. A nice thing about using these diamond laps is if I hit it, all the silver's down here. You don't get it all, but you can recover most of your silver. So I'm going to get the others done, and then we'll get to the next step. Okay. This is what you need to do next. There's a little, what's called a burr on this inside. I'm just using a dull X-Acto blade and cutting that burr off. If you don't do that, your silver won't flow up to the sides or up to the faces where you're wanting it. So get this cut out. Maybe. Okay, now that I've done that, try to move it a little closer to the camera. Hopefully it's still in camera view. There's a little tiny, you can see a shiny area around this edge. And that's where I just cleaned up. So we'll get to the next step and see how it goes. Okay, I'm going to do one more step before I drill. This has a raised edge just like the inside did. It's a burr again. Anyway, I just have this piece of wood here to give me some support. And all I'm going to do is slightly clean that burr off of there. Because of how I'm going to drill these, I need that edge to be pretty darn clean. Plus it just gives you a better finished product if you deal with all the minor details. Because if I went to solder this together with that burr there, I might not get it very close as far as the two halves lining up. You know, and I'm just lightly hitting it. I don't want to scratch the silver up too much. Fortunately, I had 4 of these so I could look at one as I was videoing it, and if I didn't do it good, I'd do another one. Well, this is number 4, so it's not good this time. We're not getting that one. Well, here I am at the jeweler's lathe once again. I realize that everybody doesn't have one of these. In fact, very few people have them. Anyway, this is where I'm going to drill my bead halves. This on this end here, this is what's called a center drill. That little tip is only a little bit under 1.5 millimeters. And then over on this other side, this is called a 6-jaw chuck. They're extremely accurate. It'll end up making that bead spin as near perfect as it can, or the bead half I should have said. If you don't have a jeweler's lathe, you can set this up like in your Fordham, and then you just drill where that original center punch hole was. You know, so I'll get on to drilling. I got to get reset up. Yeah, I think you can see the center punch mark in this bead half. If you don't have a lathe set up like this, you can just use your Fordham drill press or even drill freehand to that center punch mark. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up and we'll put a hole in it. Okay, once I have the hole in, I'm going to go in a little bit on depth to give me a bevel, which that was it. This is at 60 degrees. So if I feed that in just a little bit after the hole's drilled, it gives me a 60-degree chamfer there, which comes in handy for my next step. Okay, this is what's called a transfer stand that's used in faceting. I sacrificed this to metal bead making many years ago. These are just 2 1/8-inch rods that have roughly a 60-degree tip on each end. And what I will do is join these 2 beads together, loosen one of these, slide it back a little bit, stick that end on the hole. I'm trying to keep out of the way here. Put the other one on the hole. Okay, now I have the bead captured. Okay, you can spin it and see how even it is. You know, once you get it captured all the way, seeing as I didn't have this end in the hole. That's what happens when your eyes start getting old. Anyway, you can spin it and look at it and see if you think it's running real true. That's the setup I'll be doing when I go to solder these. I'm gonna get over where I'm gonna be soldering. I'll get one of these ready to go. The first thing I'll do is I'll paint flux on the inside of both halves, and then I'll put some snippets of solder around the edge. I'll probably heat one side a little bit to hold the solder in place, and then once I have it set up in this fixture, I'll show you soldering. I've said for years that you don't learn something new every day, you're not paying attention. Anyway, I just turned my overhead lights off, and it looks like this camera does a much better job without all those bright lights. Okay, what I've done is I put flux on the inside of these beads. I added 3 small snippets of solder to the inside of this bead, or this half. I heated it up a little bit so that the solder would stay in place. Flux that one, and now I have them in the fixture. What I'll do is I'll fire up the torch, and then I'm gonna keep the heat mostly on this side because that's where I want the solder. I want it to flow that direction, thus pulling it over and up into these flats. So I'll get ready to solder, and then I'll fire up again. Okay, I'm using a mini torch. I used just a standard press-a-light propane torch for years. I don't think I've ever even used this mini torch on these. You want a relatively good flame. It doesn't have to be super hot. Which this is pretty hot. Turn the oxygen down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to turn this around because I need to move this as I'm, so then I'll start heating up the silver. And what'll happen is all of a sudden I'll see solder come up in that crack. And if not, it looks like it came up. It's kind of funny. I taught my sister how to do this, and the first time she did it, she thought she got them all soldered perfect, and it ended up where probably at least half of them, maybe 3/4 of them, fell apart in a pickle. Anywho, that's pretty much how you solder. Again, if you pay real good attention, it might be better to use a press-a-light because that torch was getting that bead hot pretty quick. Anyway, I'll go ahead and solder the other one. I'll pickle, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay, I almost forgot to tell you people a very simple way to hold the 2 bead halves if you don't have a transfer stand. A good friend of mine, probably the top metalsmith I personally have ever known, his name's Michael Schmaltz, SCHMALTZ, if you want to find him on the internet. Anyway, this represents a piece of bent steel coat hanger, 2 little points carved on the ends. There's a spring action to it, so when you put your 2 bead halves together, you just spread that out a little bit, grab the holes, the spring action holds the bead in between, spin a little bit to make sure it's precise, and then just solder it. Okay, here's the 2 bead halves soldered together. If you'll look at the center line, you'll notice there's little to no wobble on it. The bead spins pretty darn perfectly true. Put the other bead on. This one spins a little bit better. This is my setup for finishing the bead. It's a pin vise. It's holding a drill. The shank of the drill is pretty close to the exact size of the hole. And then down underneath it, that's a piece of leather. So when the bead spins, it doesn't hit the metal of the pin vise, keep it from wearing it out or scratching it or whatever. What I'm going to do now is go in the house, go ahead and oxidize these beads, and then I'll come back out here and we'll start doing the final finishing on it. Okay, I got 2 more steps. Here's the bead that's been oxidized. What I'm going to do right here is that raised area in the center where the 2 halves got put together. I'm going to use, this is 600 mesh sandpaper. I'm going to go ahead and clean that to where it's nice and clean across the face, and then I'll clean the whole face of the bead again on this 600 mesh. I used to do this with, if I was doing like 2 or 3 strands of beads, I'd use a standard, like a 600 mesh diamond grinding wheel. And then I could get all of the silver in the tray below it. But seeing as though this is 2 beads, I'm not really too concerned about it. You can see now that it's pretty darn clean. You just want to get rid of that center high spot. I'll clean it just a little bit more. And then I'll sweep the whole bead. And I'm not pushing very hard. See, there's one side. Down further, I'll end up probably cleaning that up on the top here. I'll get this back on here. All I'm doing here is I'm trying to get where I stamp and it mush up, get rid of the mush. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the other bead. You can see what I've done. I'm going to do the other bead, get it cleaned up as good as I think they need to be, and then we'll go over to the buffer. Okay, here's the final stage. This is a stitched yellow muslin wheel. Obviously, if you look at the side there, it says 40 ply. This is ZAM. I use ZAM exclusively for polishing my silver or gold, the final polish. I also use them on every turquoise, tab beads, whatever I cut as a final polish. This will give you an amazing polish on turquoise, and you'll see what it does on silver here in a second. As you saw when the video was going on, the nice thing about these yellow muslin wheels is they're separated. So I could literally push that drill tip or that drill shank into there and it polished even my center. So there's a polished bead. I'll go ahead and get the other one finished, and then I'm going to go in and edit this video. Thanks for watching.